Hello, everyone. My name is Amanda Bentley, and I'm doing a presentation on music appreciation. So, what is music? So, we look at music in multiple different forms. The first one that we're going to take a look at is its characteristics. So, music can be described as having a type of style, a tempo, its harmony, its melody. A few others include its dynamics, its timbre, um, its range. And when we look at those things, that helps us create an emotion. So, how does that music make you feel? It makes you feel happy, sad. It gives you cool chills. That's what we call aesthetics in music. So when a music makes you feel a type of way due to its characteristics, it's something that they really strive to do as a composer. So each composer has its own way of making you feel and setting their emotions forth through music. Next thing we look at is its origin. Where did the music come from? So, one thing we're going to take a look at is music in the 1920s. Now, there was a lot going on in the 1920s, and you have to look at and take in consideration of the life events, the world events, and the culture. Where does it come from? Does it come from Eastern Eastern Europe music? Does it come from Japan? Does it come from China, where they use a different type of tonal scale? Does it come from Western music, something that we are used to hearing? Armand Hussein said recent studies have demonstrated increasing activity in brain regions associated with emotion and rewarded with listening to pleasurable music. And that is so true. And I believe that with a 100%. Part of my philosophy for music education is how music connects to us emotionally and how it makes us feel. And music not only just makes us feel a certain way, but it also changes things within us. It triggers certain emotions, certain brain aspects, certain activity regions inside of our brain to be able to have us have these feelings like cold chills or when we get really excited on the edge of their seat, when we're starting to sweat. Those are all emotions and aesthetics created through music. So, New York in the 1920s, like I mentioned earlier, a lot is going on in the 1920s. A few world events that we had was the Harlem Renaissance. And the Harlem Renaissance was one of the biggest contributions to music. The Harlem Renaissance is what started our jazz, our blues, our ragtime. And it really started to embrace the music culture. Due to that, not due to that, but one thing that also helped was music rights or women's rights movement. So the women's rights movement fought for their women's rights, obviously. Um, but because we have this jazz music going on, the women started to being rebellious and they wanted to push back against the government. So one thing that was said about women is that they wore long dresses and that they were etiquette and they were like held themselves with higher standards. So when this jazz music started to form in these clubs, women would cut their dresses short, cut their hair, and rebel against, and they would start dancing. So this women's rights movement really helped bring out the dancing side and the emotional side and the playful side of music in this general area of the 1920s. Another major thing that really helped share this music and spread this music across the western side of the states and also pushing it across seas is the rise of media and radio within New York. Um, Thanks to that, we really couldn't have been able to push our music across the seas into where people were able to hear our music and really build off of that. And that's what started this culture, and that's what started Western music and started our era. Herbert Art Gallery and Museum said with the combination of motor vehicles, relative economic affluence after the First World War, and the extension of compulsory education, young people found themselves with more freedom than before, and their newfound free time was often spent dancing and listening to the latest music. That is so important because it allows these people to have time to feel this music and really understand it. Because before it was just music. It wasn't understood. It wasn't brought out. It wasn't played through. So, how do we actually appreciate this music that we listen to? Well, one of the first things we have to look at who composed the music. So, one of the things that you look at when you look at who composed it is like Bach, for instance. Bach was a classical composer. He came from that classical area of music. Versus when you look at John Philip Sousa is more known for marches. So marches and a classical piece is going to sound way different because marches are built mainly for military bands. They're very upbeat, kind of fun, and classical music can be range of anything. It can be dramatic, it can be soothing, relaxing. And going off of that classical era, we have to look at what year the piece was composed in, because we do have different musical eras. You have the Baroque era, you have the Romantic era, you have classical era, you have the modern era, and it just keeps going on and it keeps building. So that's why you look at that, is if you can tell if the music is going to have these stylistic changes, these differences between the eras. For instance, if it's a Baroque piece, it's going to have a lot of polyphony and it's going to be a lot of church music and stuff that is just going to be really built on top of each other, versus a Romantic and classical era where you can understand the music a little bit more and it's a little bit easier for the ear to understand as well. So how does the music make you feel? We get into these types of things that the stylistic characteristics of the piece itself can make you feel a certain way. So like dissonance, for instance, will give us a sense of thrill. A dissonance is when you have two closely related notes that create kind of a sense of pulling and tension. Over here at the piano, I'm going to explain a little bit more on what dissonance is. So we understand this type is pleasing to the ear. But when we get into something that sounds, you have that dissonance. In really fast-paced music, it can create a thrill and kind of a sense of pulling and pushing, like an unsureness. Another thing we look at is its tempo. So when we have a piece that is nice and slow and relaxed, and out of nowhere it's building, and you see this a lot in action movies as well, action movie music, it creates a sense of adrenaline rush. It gets you on the edge of your seat, gets you ready for whatever is coming next. I talked a little bit about polyphony in the Baroque era. Polyphony was mainly used in church music. So polyphony is a lot of different harmonies built on one another, a lot of different melodies. There's multiple things going on at once. It creates sort of this crazy, like you don't know what to listen to and you can't focus. Another thing that we look at is its harmonies. You can get a sense of eerie feeling within the harmony, and it can create an eerie sense, or this can be this beautiful soaring melody to make you feel like cold chills and just make you feel like you're on top of the world. The most important key factors to when it comes to appreciating music is to listen, to engage, to understand the music, and to be able to feel it. Hans Christian Andersen said that where words fail, music speaks. And I truly believe that, because composers don't write music just for nothing. We write music to be able to express how we feel, to share our emotions. Beethoven wrote a piece to where it's nothing but death. It's about a requiem. And it's a very disturbing piece, but if you listen to it, you sit and listen and engage with it, you can understand where he's coming from and how he's so scared that, he's not going to be able to hear. And that's one of the biggest things for him as a composer, because if he can't hear, how can he make music? But he can still make music because he can still feel and he has those emotions. And here's my works cited.